Then we had a panel discussion on clairvoyance where we had an assortment of other clairvoyants and some people who do channeling, and they shared their experiences and also some techniques. That was really what we wanted to focus today to be about, was sharing techniques that people can take home with them so they can start practicing on their own. So it's a little challenging when each speaker has only 5 minutes or so to share their techniques. And some of the psychics are more used to teaching techniques than others. One of the things that I really tried to do, I've really made it my mission in life, is to spread this information to everybody as quickly as possible. It does take some practice with the techniques and some working with them and discipline, but for way too long, for centuries, a lot of this information has really been kept for the chosen few, and many times it was kept by people for an assortment of reasons, but even those who have known how to use these techniques have kind of kept them a little bit to themselves, or there's different schools out there that teach these. When I first, excuse me, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I had always been somewhat psychic. I had a twin sister, and we would have lots of different telepathic experiences together where I would know what she was about to say, or she might be out somewhere and something would happen to her and I would know what was going on with her, or vice versa. I always felt that she was a little more psychic than I was. She was always surprising me with her abilities. But really, growing up, we had no idea how to actually control these things. So we had a very strong interest. We were always reading everything we could get our hands on, but basically all we could find was information saying, well, you should meditate and be clear, but that was about it. So it wasn't until I was about 27 years old when I stumbled upon a clairvoyant training school in Berkeley, California, the Berkeley Psychic Institute. And I'm no longer affiliated with them. I spent a couple of years there, and that was about 15 years ago. But what I found there was that there wasn't just one or two incredible psychics. There were close to 100. And some of these people, at first I thought, oh, they must have been doing this for years and years. But no, it was actually, they had only been doing it. Some of the people were just a couple months ahead of me in their training. So it was a great experience. I went through an intensive 13-month clairvoyant training program. But it was expensive, and it was definitely, it required a lot of time. I think I trained like about 5 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week for an entire year. And what I started to see after I graduated, and just meeting people through doing readings and other things, was that there's a lot of people out there who already have a certain level of skill, or who just didn't need that level of intensity of a program, or they had family commitments and other things that would keep them from being able to go through such a program. So that's when I set out to write my books, You Are Psychic, Extraordinary Psychic, and later Freeing the Genie Within. And so the idea with the books, and really with what I'm teaching and what we're going to do tonight, is, again, my goal is to try to get people up to speed as quickly as possible, to share whatever I possibly know. If I could just like insert like a little disc into my brain and just insert it into yours and just download all the information, I would love to be able to do that. And maybe someday we'll have that ability so we can really learn really, really fast and move on to other things. But so tonight, you can think of it kind of like that. I'm going to do everything I can to get you guys so that you'll know what, at least the general procedure of how to do a reading. Now there's many different types of readings and different ways of how to do a reading, and so I'm going to start you off with just really the basics. And so, is there anyone here who has any objections to actually going into meditation and practicing tonight? Well, once in a while you get someone who says, oh, I thought I was just going to sit here and listen to a lecture. So, all right, so what we're going to do now is, let me just ask, does anyone have any questions or anything pressing you want to know before we get started? Yeah, you know what, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I'm going to put you guys into meditation pretty quickly, so yeah, so you won't need to. What we're going to start off doing is just some basic techniques of grounding, just some real, really when you're doing energy work, such as either healing work or psychic work, it helps to ground yourself, to center yourself, and to have your energy flowing. There's many different ways to do those things, and also to have some kind of understanding of your own boundaries, where you leave off and others begin, so whether boundaries or protection. So we're going to go over those basics real quickly, and then we're going to go into our reading practice. And when we practice our readings, what we're going to do is a procedure by which we have everybody sit together as a group, get in alignment with each other, and everyone is going to perform a reading on one person. And we'll do that a couple of times and see how far we get. If we were doing this as a longer class, many times I teach weekend workshops or 3-month programs, but if let's say we had the whole day, what I would do is by the afternoon, I would be breaking you up into smaller and smaller groups until you got just one-on-one. But we'll see how far we get tonight. The benefit of reading as a whole group together is not only do you get validation from the person that you're reading, but even more importantly, when you are reading with a group, you'll start to see something, and then, or you'll see something and maybe you'll be afraid to talk about it, and then the person sitting next to you will say exactly what you were looking at. Now that doesn't always happen, but that'll happen enough where you start to get confirmation from the other people reading with you that something's going on because they just saw the same thing, or 3 or 4 other people saw the same thing. You'll see that many times when we see psychics on TV, or even like celebrity psychics like Sylvia Brown or John Edwards, one of the things that they do is they ask a lot of questions, and they're constantly asking for feedback. In this procedure, and the way I teach is I don't let you do that. Now, that's not to say you can't ever ask the person you're reading a question or occasionally have dialogue, but really to be disciplined in your training, it's best to have your eyes closed when you're doing the reading, because you don't want to get input from reading the person's facial expressions. It could also really distract you, whether they're looking distressed or they're looking really happy. It's just better to keep your eyes closed. And then it's better to not ask them a lot of questions, because that just really disrupts the process. And many times, sometimes, yeah, they can give you feedback right away, but their feedback can be distracting. And many times, they may not initially know what it is you're talking about. Part of the process is very much an unfolding. It's really almost like you get one clue, and then another clue, and another clue, and over time it starts to tell a story about the person. And so sometimes you will get a whole chunk of information, but sometimes it's just little slivers of information. And so if you get one little sliver of information and then you're asking the person if it's right or not, they're either not going to be able to tell you, or they might have their own interpretation, or they may not know what you're talking about because maybe you're seeing something about the future, or maybe you're seeing something that they're unconscious to. Because when it comes to reading people, one of the things that happens, and really the benefit of reading people, is to help them realize what they're not aware of, or to help them get over their blocks. If they were aware of their blocks, then maybe they wouldn't have them. And so if they don't have that awareness, then how can they tell you, yeah, you're right, you're being wonderful in that moment? That may come later. It may come at the end of the reading. It may come a week later, a year later, or a lot of times you're never going to get feedback. So that's a reason why it's helpful to read with other psychics, because if they're kind of along the same lines as you are, you're going to get what we call validation. And really, when to set apart people who are just starting off on this path of psychic reading compared to people who are more advanced, it's really just a matter of confidence. There are some other things too. The longer you do this, the faster the information flows. The faster more meaning will come with your images. When I first started out doing this, I would have lots and lots of images come to me, but I would really have no idea what they meant. And And sometimes they were really silly. My very first reading I was reading this lady and I saw this little bunny rabbit hopping across my screen. And to this day, that was 15 years ago, and I'm still like, what was that bunny rabbit? I never did figure it out. But over time, the meaning will start to come. So not only are we going to be looking at images, which is what clairvoyance is, looking at information in the form of images, pictures, and colors, but we're also going to allow our clairaudience to come into play. And that's really being able to hear information psychically. Now, what are you hearing? Many times you're hearing that person's thoughts, or you're hearing their innermost being telling you something. And you can usually tell if it's coming from them because it'll be in the first person. Like it'll be as if they actually spoke with their mouth, but you'll know it, you just heard it in your head and it somehow registered. You might hear it in the form of their voice. Or you might hear from one of their guides or your guides in the form of words. You may also just have instant knowing. And instant knowing is just what it sounds like, where suddenly it's almost like this little, something just lands in your mind and you just know it. Sometimes that comes along with a picture. Other times you won't get a picture at all, but you'll just have that knowing. And then along with all of this, your clairsentience will also be at play. And clairsentience is the psychic ability of feeling another person's emotions. So I am positive that during the course of the evening, at least a couple of you will have that experience. And that can also provide helpful information. It can help you know how that person is feeling. If they have a pain in a particular place in their body, you may feel it in your body. And so that can be helpful. The downside, if all you have is clairsentience, is that you feel a pain in your back and that tells you they're having a pain in their back. But if you don't have the ability to look into it further, that may not really be all that helpful. They probably already know they have a pain in their back. So with all of these abilities, they really can cross-reference each other. Sometimes if I hear a message and I'm not sure, is this me just generating it, or is it a message that came about from an outside source, like a guide, I'll tell myself, okay, I want to double check this with my clairvoyance, and I'll ask for an image to come up. Or if, let's say I'm reading along and I start to feel like just the images stop and I start to feel stuck, there's definitely been times where I just say to my guides or whoever's out there, like, would someone just give me an answer real quick, because I need some help here. And usually I will then like either do instant knowing or hearing a voice saying, here, this is what's going on. So with that, what I'd like to do is go into our first opening meditation. And so for now, you guys can you guys in the back hear me? Do you guys want to move up? Okay. Just let me know if you're having any trouble. So you guys can all stay in your chairs that you're in now, and then we'll do a little rearranging when we get ready for our reading portion. So right now we're just going to start, we're going to slow everything down. And that means I'd like you all to close your eyes. And for some people, it takes a little getting used to having someone speak to you. We're just used to, in American society, it's as if it's not polite to not look at the person who's speaking. But so just put that aside and just have your eyes closed for this whole time. And also, we're going to have our feet flat on the floor, because this is really the position in which you can be most grounded. Now, I know there are different types of yogic practices where you'll have your legs crossed. So I'm not saying you can't be grounded with your legs crossed, but for the purposes of what we're doing here, this will be the optimal position. So we're just going to start to slow everything down and become aware of your body right now. It's been a long day. You've been talking to lots of different people and doing lots of different activities. So just check in with yourself and see how your body feels.